Hello viewers, I'm SB and welcome to my Game of the Year list for 2021. Yes, really. Look, let me just have the obvious question off at the pass here. It's the middle of June, and I know you all want to ask, SB, how on earth did you get this video out so quickly? Well, noble viewer, that is just the kind of focus, timeliness, alacrity, and raw power of will that you can expect from us here at, whatever the heck this channel is called. Now, as with last year's list, these 10 games are not presented in any particular order. I literally took the list to random.org. These are just 10 games that made a huge impression on me in 2021, and I love each one of them in its own way. So, let's get to it. First up, we have Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. You know, I'm kind of surprised how little I heard about this, given that it is like a real, actual Shovel Knight game. Well, sort of. You know, it's got all your favorite knights in it, but it's like kind of a weird mix of a falling block puzzle and a tactics game, and also kind of a rhythm game. And of course, because it's 2022, it's sort of a roguelite. Blocks and enemies fall into place while you run around inside the puzzle, smashing things and setting off chains with your trusty shovel. The cast of playable characters is remarkably broad and varied, although, not a huge surprise to people who played a lot of Shovel Knight. The soundtrack totally slaps, and the gameplay is quick and bouncy. Is that a thing gameplay can be? Bouncy? Hopefully you get what I mean. I really appreciate that this team was willing to make such a departure from the gameplay that this character is known for, and deliver such a weird thing. Weird is worth a lot of points with me. Which is as good a seg as any into talking about Stuck in Time, because this one's weird in a couple of ways. 2021 was a big year for games about time loops, some of which had interesting ideas, and some of which were not just the worst game of the year, but perhaps the most phenomenally boneheaded video game misfire since the year started with a 1. I cannot understand, okay, how do you even write something so fucking misguided, and then go and pay the kind of money that you would have to pay to get James McAvoy to read that garbage, let alone what it would take to... Which is as good a seg as any into talking about Stuck in Time, because this, that's weird. This feels very familiar somehow. Anyway, there were a lot of time loop games in 2021, and some of them were actually possible for a human being to like. I cannot imagine the thought process, right, that leads a person to go, yeah, that's what this story is about. This dude just loves fucking his sister. Which is as good a seg as any into talking about, what was I talking about? Time loops, or, that reminds me. Did y'all play that time loop game about how hard it is to be a guy who loves fucking his sister? Which is as good a seg as any, I see what's happening here. I've somehow become caught in a clumsy narrative device. Okay, this is probably fixable. Usually you just have to stop fucking up to break the loop, right? So, what do I'm probably not supposed to bring up the badly designed and terribly written game about the guy who loves fucking his sister. Which is as good a seg as any into talking about Stuck in Time, because this one's weird in a couple of ways. 2021 was a big year for games about time loops. Why, it's almost like there's something about the state of the world that really makes people wish they could go back in time and make some different choices. Weird. Anyway, if you've never heard of Stuck in Time before, it might be because it originally came out under the title of Loop Odyssey, which, combined with its logo treatment and release timing, made me assume that it was just a cheap ripoff of Loop Hero, so I didn't play it right away. And I must not have been the only one who thought so, because the thing that prompted the name change to Stuck in Time was a DMCA claim that got the game briefly kicked off the Steam store. The funny thing about that, though, is that actually, Stuck in Time doesn't play like Loop Hero at all. It's like a weird programming idle game, which is a unique and honestly really clever approach, I think, to the structure of the time loop genre. The familiarity mechanic at the core of it is a remarkably simple and straightforward implementation of one of the core ideas of time loop stories. And honestly, I'm surprised I've never seen another game do it this way. There's some interesting exploration and discovery stuff here, a few fun twists, and a style of character illustration that I love very much. It really recalls like those old Delphian software games, you know? Now, despite being in a narrative genre that you're probably very familiar with at this point, Stuck in Time probably isn't actually like anything else you've ever played. Okay, I'm sure this next one comes as no surprise to people who've been watching my videos for the last year. Slipways is just perfect for me. From the broad strokes of the Alien Coalition science fiction setting, to the extremely chill vibe of the music, down to even the small details like the pop and bounce of the UI elements, and the incredibly satisfying flash of flipping a group of planets to higher prosperity levels. Slipways feels almost like a score attack mode for the 4X genre, and it gets there by eliminating the consistently worst implemented of the X's. You are very much alone out here with no capability for or interest in militarism. All there is to do is to drive the numbers up by managing a complex web of needs and resources, while also solving cool science fiction space problems. You know, I can't even say that sentence without salivating like one of Pavlov's dogs. This thing is just brilliantly executed and basically laser focused at my interests. Inscription is one of the most widely acclaimed games of 2021, and for very good reason. It takes a well-worn set of mechanical ideas and a well-trod video game creepypasta narrative, and winds them both around each other to newer, cleverer ends, and the execution of it is just extremely fun. You know, it has everything. Spooky voices, obscure puzzles, skeletons, humor, self-mutilation, interpretive dance, and really a lot of squirrels. And that's just the stuff I'm not afraid to spoil. This is the rare spooky game that actually functions well, both as a spooky story and an actually interesting game. And I think that's worth celebrating. The modern Hitman Trilogy is so good, and I just lock so hard on the absurd humor of the very self-serious characters who earnestly believe that they're in this slick, dramatic spy thriller universe, getting Looney Tunes to death by the best reverse Elmer Fudd in the business. You can tell that the formulas underpinning these games are starting to run out of steam, but the developers still managed to squeeze out some really compelling new murder plots in some fun, vibrant settings. I have played a whole lot of video games about murder, but very rarely does one allow you to feel so much like a powerful architect of fate while also making you feel like you are one wrong step from your plan shattering into total, desperate, screaming, explosive chaos. That's a pretty narrow eye, and the skill with which IO is able to consistently design situations that allow you to thread it is why I think every part of this trilogy has deserved to be called Game of the Year. Have I mentioned how much I love chill vibe puzzle games? Dwarf Romantic is a beautifully simple game about shaping terrain and placing little hexagonal tiles. Obviously, I cannot reveal my entire formula, valuable trade secrets, you understand, but letting me click little hexagons together is always going to earn a lot of points in my personal algorithm. Doing missions and maintaining groups gives you just enough to focus on to keep driving you forward, while everything else about the game encourages you to just chill and enjoy the atmosphere. Enjoy the ambiance. Watch a little deer hang out in the woods. Score some points, or whatever. Just relax. It is so good. Griftlands is another brilliant feat of world building, although perhaps a slightly different definition of that word. There's been a real explosion of roguelite deck builders over the last few years, but I don't think any of the others have the character that Griftlands has. There's a brilliance in the extension of the procedural elements into the side bits of the narrative, and the humor really lands for me in a way that a lot of game writing doesn't. I also really love the fact that your character is developing two skill sets in parallel, because of the variety that allows in overall build strategy and shades of characterization. In particular, I love the moments when decisions made in one of the conflict modes carries over into the other, like when being a crazed murderer makes you more effective at intimidating people. And I really wish there had been more examples of this, more interweaving between the different systems. This game is such a cool design, and honestly, I would be so excited to see a sequel that builds out these ideas, both mechanical and narrative, even further. Solar Ash is just so slick. It's tempting to capsule pitch this game as something like, what if you jet grind radio to Shadow of the Colossus? And even though that is a compelling idea, it leaves out a lot of the magic of Solar Ash. The environments are beautiful and otherworldly, the character designs are spooky and delightful, and it feels so damn good to play. Like, the moment-to-moment experience of this game is so smooth and so sharp. And then when you do a good job, you're rewarded with some kind of breathtaking visual and even more opportunities to go fast and look cool. This game is just a joy all the way around. And speaking of things that are just a joy all the way around, holy hell, y'all. I gave very brief thought to not including Echoes of the Eye on this list because it's an expansion rather than a standalone game. But honestly, that just seemed like fully ignoring the spirit of the list in order to adhere to its letter. And to be honest, Echoes of the Eye is so incredibly good that this list would be a filthy lie without it. I was a little worried when it was announced because I felt like Outer Wilds was already such a perfect and complete package. But my concerns were completely unfounded, it turns out. Echoes of the Eye adds a fascinating new mystery and some truly impressive moments while just deepening the themes of the original game. It is a complete triumph. And finally, we have Beastbreaker. Listen, we all like Peggle, right? But there is one big problem at the core of Peggle's design, one really big screw-up. And it's a little embarrassing, kind of an amateur mistake. They forgot to make it about fighting kaiju. Fortunately, the people behind Beastbreaker were insightful enough to correct this flaw, while also making an extremely cute game with adorable characters, compelling gameplay, and a story that is honestly far more thoughtful than it needs to be. It is so much fun to experiment with the dozens of combinations of weapon types and abilities, and to develop strategies for hacking through all the different types of giant, terrifying beasts. Now, it's not totally flawless, because they did make the main character and their family mice, instead of heroic and lovable rats, but if you can forgive that faux pas, I think Beastbreaker is absolutely phenomenal. And that's the list. If you didn't play and love every single one of those games last year, then I'm afraid you have wasted your life. It's embarrassing. It's really, really irresponsible of you, honestly. You should be more like me and definitely get everything important done. Extremely on time, in fact. For real though, I am sorry about the delay. My life has been really wild and unpredictable for some time now. And while a lot of that is good stuff, it's still overwhelming. Very, extremely overwhelming. Hopefully I'll be able to talk about that soon. But thank you all so much for digging my content and helping to support me through a very complicated year. Or, 18 months or whatever. And I hope y'all stick around for the next one.